Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today we're going to make a card that has a lot of mistakes in it, and the reason I'm going to do this is because I think that a lot of times we're going ahead and we're making a card and we hit a roadblock and then we just want to give up, and I'm going to show you how to work through a bunch of these mistakes today. I'm also going to show you how to use Chameleon pens. I've had a lot of people ask me about these alcohol markers, so I thought I would use them in today's card. This video is brought to you by Rubber Stamp Tapestry. I'll be using their peg stamps as well as their unmounted window box stamp here. And they have a wonderful sale going on right now. They have 40% off, I think like almost 90 sets on their website. So click the link in the video description to go to that sale page so you can stock up and save a bundle. I stamped this window box with Memento ink because I know that it works really well with alcohol pens, and I'm working on Neenah Solar White cardstock. It is the Classic Crest super smooth finish, and it just really helps any blending that you want to do with alcohol pens. So these Chameleon markers can be used just as a regular pen like I'm using here. I just colored in the window that really light blue, and I'm putting in this shadow here with this rich cocoa color, and then I'm going to start sharing some different ways to use them. You can see that the pen looks really long. Well, part of the length of the pen is actually a blending chamber. So what that is it's like a compartment that holds clear alcohol. So here I'm going into a lighter color brown, and I'm just touching along the edge of the darker brown that I have there, and now I'm going in with more of like a tan color and going over that edge because that other color, which was bisque, wasn't quite what I was after. So once I've blended out that really dark color, I'm going to try making a lighter tone with the blending chamber and this tan marker. So what you want to do is pull the end off of the marker, and you're going to touch that to the blending tip. Okay, you need to make sure you hold it straight up and down so that the alcohol can wick down from the blending chamber into the marker, and that's going to give your marker some really light blending medium on the end. So now I want to start a little ways away from my shadow and color towards my dark, and that's going to give me that nice blend. What a lot of people find is a disadvantage to these is that you do often have to keep putting that blending chamber on your marker so that you can get that light color, and you're working light to dark, which may feel a little counterintuitive if you generally like to blend dark to light like I do. I have the kit of 22 markers. It comes with a clear blender, so that's really handy if I end up getting a hard edge where I don't want it. I can just kind of scribble over the edges where I want it kind of light and soften things up. So they can be used very similar to other alcohol markers you have, but just kind of keep their special qualities in mind while you're working with them. If you don't have a lot of alcohol pens, one thing I really like is the fact that you can layer over them. So I first colored in this window box kind of like a terracotta color, thinking that that would look pretty, but it didn't stand out enough. So then I went over it with kind of an olivey green and then with a darker green. And here I'm blending it with another lighter kind of grassy spring green. So think about that when you're coloring. If you don't have a ton of markers, layer them. And that can be done with any brand of alcohol markers you have. I like that the alcohol markers don't tend to pill the paper. So I thought the shutters would be pretty using one of those shades of tealy green that I used, and so I'm using the blending chamber there to make my marker light and then just coloring back and forth down so I get that nice blend. Now I'm cleaning up the edges just by coloring in with my marker, and I'm flipping it over again so I can get that same blend. I'm going to start the light at the top of the shutter just like I did before, and just keep coloring in horizontal strokes as I go down so that I can get that nice fade. Now you don't have to be too careful once you've seen that your marker has kind of let all the clear blending go out, and then you can go in and clean up your edges. You can also add another layer if you want to put in shadows. That just keeps everything harmonious, and everything just happens to match naturally when you do that. Once you have all your coloring done, you can start your stamping, and I chose a large cluster of flowers, a small cluster of flowers, and some leaves, and I'm going in with some just kind of dangly vines that aren't really showing up too well against my background, but don't worry, I'm going to show you how to fix that later. And I'm doing some smaller red flowers, and then I realized that they would really be helped if I touched them up a little bit with a marker. So there's another tip. If you go in to stamp on top of something you've colored and it's not showing up, go ahead and grab your markers and touch up the images. It really makes them pop, and that way you don't have to throw away your card. There'll be quite a few little instances today where we're going to feel like we might want to throw away our card, but I'm going to talk you through it because I think these teachable moments is what stamp school is all about, and teaching you how to make the most of your supplies and to keep from throwing something away that really could turn out to be quite beautiful. Now I'm tearing out this image because I think it's really pretty with that deckled edge, and we're going to go and add some details with some gel pens. You can add a shine in the window with the gel pens, as well as tracing some of the petals so they stand out against the window box and the windowsill there. You can add little lines to bring highlights onto the slats and the louvered window blinds, what do you call those things, shutters, and put any other little details in that you want. I think it really brightens it up and makes the whole image stand out. Now when I'm looking at that, I'm thinking, you know, I could really use some more shadow around the shutters and to kind of give it a little more depth. So I went right in with that tan that I had used before to color and put on another layer. Remember, alcohol pens are transparent no matter what brand you're using, so you can layer them up until you get them as dark as you like. So you don't need to have a bazillion markers to get a nicely colored image. Here I'm even going in further with some more shadows and making everything just a little bit sharper. And that's what you're going for, depth and sharpness and saturation of color. Another tool and tip I want to share with you about using alcohol pens is to use a fineliner. And different companies make these. This one happened to come with my set of Chameleon pens, but basically what it is a fine tip black pen. And any place I felt like something needed a little extra edge, I can go and outline it like I did with some of the flowers, but then I thought it would be kind of cool to make some cracks in the plaster around my my window box and my shutters. I thought that would be really pretty to make it look really old. So I drew the cracks and then I went ahead in and colored them in with my tan that I had colored the background with, because remember, transparent, we can keep layering it. It's just going to make it a little darker and it works really well. This marker also has a slightly more bullet tip that I could go in and add some pointillism shading and any other deeper accents that I wanted to put in there. And then, you know, adjust your shadows as you go, add more greens, add more tans, whatever you think your image needs, and you can really create something quite nice with those pens. Now we're going to start work on the background panel, and I wanted it to look kind of wood grainy, so I went with a piece of just a grungy old scrap of white cardstock or cream cardstock, and I put it through my embossing folder, the wood grain folder in my embossing machine, and then just swiped it with some distress ink. That was just a little too stark, so what I did was spritzed it with water and then tried to spread some of that ink around with a wet brush. That really didn't work too well, I think, because that just kind of cheapy cardstock just didn't have enough sizing in it to let that ink blend. So I'm throwing in some Gelatos and just kind of scribbling it on, and I'm just going to spray it again and kind of sponge it around. Now I like what's happening here with the colors. Unfortunately the cardstock's starting to break down and pill. You can see those little bits of cardstock that are being rubbed off, but it's not a big deal. What we're doing here is creating a very distressed background, and it's great for when you have like a piece of cardstock that maybe got an ink smudge on it. It's, you know, it's still, you know, would be okay except for the smudge. Well, this is a great way to use it. You don't need to throw those pieces of cardstock away. So now that I've gotten this color down, I feel like I want to bring out that wood grain a little bit. So I'm using some gesso and just kind of trying to drag it across the raised areas and kind of tone down the ink a little bit because it was a little bit bold. And now I'm adding some gelato into the gesso to try to just give it a little bit of color. I want a look of like kind of distressed, worn down wood that maybe was painted at one point. Now, I have to admit I overdid it with the gesso and I lost a lot of my wood grain, so I decided that I'd go in with my Gelatos again and start coloring in some more color. So I'm using different colors. I'm thinking of like, well, maybe this wood was painted a few times and sanded down or repainted. I just wanted some color, but I didn't want anything too crazy. So I'm using shades of brown. I'm using some like kind of a forest green, a little bit of red, then some like kind of rusty color, and that beautiful turquoise color that I love, and just kind of alternating them in there until I get a background that's going to complement my focal image. Now this, I kind of feel like this card is a series of unfortunate events. So here I'm thinking I want more texture, so I'm going to put it through my embossing machine again. So what I did was I wrapped it in wax paper and ran it through my die cut machine, but it actually made a bunch of it stick to the wax paper, which kind of looked cool. So I decided to leave it like that, but I wanted to make a little bit of a frame. So here I like the back of the paper too, so I'm just kind of like folding over some edges just to see what I get and to see if I can make an interesting frame that way. So now I'm inking up the back side edges of my embossed paper and adding some gelato and just basically trying to give it a little bit of interesting character so I can fold those edges around and potentially make a frame for my card this way. So now it's pretty much looking at this and trying to decide how much of a reveal of that back that I want. I don't want to cover up too much of my foreground, so I decided in the end I would just fold down the top and the bottom. I wanted the edges to look like kind of weathered old wood, so I'm using my fingernails to just kind of mess up and distress those edges. And there we can see the background that we have. I grabbed a Kraf card base and just kind of wiped it with my cornstarch pouch so I could do some stamping and embossing, and I'm using this rather fancy thank you stamp that I've had forever. I think it was a personal stamp exchange stamp. It's that old. And I'm stamping it in black pigment ink. And now I'm going to add some black embossing powder and heat emboss it. Now I was thinking at this point this was all going to be on this Kraf card base, but as you'll see as we progress with this card, I actually made quite a mess of the inside of the card, so I realized that we were going to have to do something different. But at this point I was thinking I was still going to keep this all as one layer. I needed a way to attach my wood grain panel to my card base, so I thought I would use these really funky grommets that I had in my stash. I've had them forever. They look kind of like hexagonal nuts that you would use like on a bolt in a hardware project. I don't know, a woodworking project, I guess. And I used my crocodile to punch holes and to secure them in. I unfortunately either had my settings wrong or not enough elbow grease because they weren't very neat looking on the back, so you'll see how I deal with that in a little bit. But I want to have a nice frame around my my focal point when I finally glue it on, and I thought, well, I'm going to use some cording and go through the two edges of my my panel there, not where I didn't have the folded over bit, so I could kind of complete the frame and give it a more complete feeling. So I just simply wove in some twine and tied it on the back, and that gave me a nice little place where I can adhere my focal point down. Now, as I'm looking on the inside of my card, I'm thinking this doesn't look very pretty. I really don't want that to be visible, and also with all the stuff I'm gluing on, it's kind of a little too much for this flimsy card base. So I ended up using some heavy-duty cardstock, the 120-pound Recollections cardstock, to make a card base that would hold up to all of the embellishments and weight that I have on the front of the card. As you can see here, I have trimmed the kind of Kraf card base down so that I just have this panel here where I'm going to be adhering my window box, and I also trimmed out the thank you portion. I wanted to continue on with a rustic theme, so I'm using this little edge distresser to just kind of rough up the edges and make them look a little tattered and worn. I'm going to do the same thing to the thank you portion as well. Now I'm arranging everything on the heavy-duty cream cardstock and trying to figure out where everything's going to go. I figured that if I was going to put the thank you under the main panel, I needed something to kind of fill in the space on either side of it, so I'm using the Pegstamps to repeat stamp those same images I used in the window box. To make the card look more finished, I am simply swiping the edges with some brown ink, and then I'm just going to go around the edges with some of that pretty turquoise gelato that I've been using, and then I like to blend that with a baby wipe. That way I don't get so much water in there that it warps my cardstock. To assemble the card, I'm using a generous amount of ATG adhesive because I really have to make sure that it's going to be strong enough to carry that heavy panel that has the grommets in it and the string. I want to make sure there's a really good bond there. So I'm pressing that down pretty well. And I'm using an ample amount of foam squares to adhere my window box portion down. And I'm just kind of fussing it around, figuring exactly where I want it. I like to have a little more space at the bottom than over my focal point so that it gives a little bit of weight to my design. Now I'm thinking about that space on the bottom, and I'm trying to decide if I really want my thank you portion to be right in the middle of that white cardstock, or if I want to kind of overlap things a little bit. I decided that I like the overlap look better, so I'm just grabbing those same peg stamps that I've used all throughout the card, and I'm adding some more flowers and vines through there just to balance it out and fill in that section so I can put that thank you label wherever I want to on the card. And using more foam squares, I am adhering that thank you label to kind of balance overlap between the bottom and the top of the card. And if you see that camera shake, that is actually my kids upstairs running up and down the hallway. It actually jiggled my camera, which is attached to a big stick on the ceiling. I know, fancy, huh? I want to thank you so much for watching today. If you enjoyed these tips, let me know in the comments below and tell me what tips you're going to try on your next card. Don't forget the big sale at Rubber Stamp Tapestry. They have 40% off a bunch of their sets, and they have some accessories on sale too, so don't miss it out. I'll have a sale link in the video description for you to click. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you're not already a subscriber here already so you can be notified of all my new videos. And until next time, happy crafting!